Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent. A goal joining you on Thursday, soon after Mikel Arteta has finished speaking at his pre-match press conference. Arteta talking ahead of that game against Newcastle on Saturday, when Arsenal will be looking to get back to winning ways after that defeat at Anfield on Saturday evening, wasn't it, last weekend? Really big game, this Newcastle one. I think Arsenal need to keep the momentum going. I know, obviously, they lost, so you think the momentum's gone, but I don't think it really has. And I think if Arsenal can just get straight back to winning ways against Newcastle this weekend, then the momentum will continue from the winning run and the unbeaten run that they had going into that game against Anfield. If they lose or drop points against Newcastle on Saturday, then you start to think, oh no, we're not going to get into a similar situation at this time last year. So it just feels like a big game for Arsenal, this one. It's one they've got to get back to winning ways, put what happened at Anfield behind them, and then go look ahead to what's going to be two really tricky away games to come after the Newcastle game, when they go to Old Trafford and they go to Goodison, two grounds where they haven't done too well at over the last sort of 5 years or so, or Old Trafford even further back, although they did obviously have that good win last time thanks to Aubameyang's penalty. Some interesting stuff from Mikel at today's press conference that I will go over, give my thoughts on. Talking a little bit about a sort of a changing room inquest almost that Arsenal had after Anfield, immediately after what happened at Anfield, going into a little bit of detail about what went on. And he was asked the question, have you seen a good response at the training ground this week? And he said, not only there, I really liked the reaction that we already had in the dressing room at Anfield straight after the game, and how some players took leadership and described what happened in a really honest way, and they looked forward. That is not something that in a season, it will never be like this. There are always bumps in the road, there are results, injuries, there are issues you have to deal with, and I really liked how the team has reacted through the week after what happened at Anfield. And he was asked about sort of, well, what do you mean about players speaking up in the dressing room? Is that what happened afterwards? And he said, yes, that is something that didn't used to happen before, and I'm really pleased that it's happening at the moment. And I spoke a little bit about what I heard from Aaron Ramsdale. I did this in a video earlier on in the week, and Ramsdale's interview immediately after the Anfield game, and I really liked what he had to say during that interview. And this kind of continues this sort of what he's saying about the players sort of standing up, taking leadership in the dressing room straight afterwards, having a bit of an inquest into what went on, and then looking forward as well. And I think that's good. And the fact that he said this never used to happen, which you kind of feel like at Arsenal. I think if there's not many leaders. It's been well documented at times. Arsenal is a club where you don't really look at a changing room full of leaders. I think Granit Xhaka is certainly one, but he's not around at the moment, although we will get to Xhaka later on in this video. But it feels like that's changing a little bit now. I mean, Aaron Ramsdale certainly, exactly what he said in that interview after the game to the TV cameras. There's no doubt in my mind that he went in and he said the exact same thing to the players. Now, he's a new face. Obviously, he's young, obviously. But he's just the type of character, the type of personality who will go into that changing room and he will make his voice heard. And I think that's really, really important. I think there are some other players in that dressing room as well. I would certainly hope Aubameyang has took on what was said. Lacazette maybe had a word. I think Ben White potentially could be in that. Kieran Tierney certainly would be in that. And so it's good to hear that from Mikel that happened after the game, because what you don't want is that Anfield game to just suddenly turn things on the head, and all the good work that's gone on in the last couple of months suddenly disappears and Arsenal go into a downward spiral, so to speak, kind of like they did at this stage of the season last season, when they just couldn't get results. They let everything get on top of them, and the season just basically blew up in spectacular fashion, didn't it, until the turn of the year when they managed to turn things around. You don't want that happening this time. Yes, it was a bad defeat, but you've got to move on. And the fact that they immediately had this sort of inquest in the changing room afterwards, when they talked, they were honest, Mikel says, and they look forward. And I think that's a really essential thing, is that you just put that one to bed and you just look forward to Newcastle. And this is such a big game. It's why I think it's such a big game this Saturday, is that Arsenal have to get back going quickly. They need to win, put what happened at Anfield to bed, and get the points on the board, and then go into those two tricky away games that are coming up in the Premier League. So interesting stuff there from Mikel Arteta, and let's hope whatever was said in the changing room, or whatever has been said in the training ground since this week, has a big effect, and Arsenal come out of the blocks very, very quickly on Saturday and get the job done against the Newcastle side, who are still without a win in the Premier League this season. As I mentioned there, Granit Xhaka earlier on in this, and I said we'd get to him. There's some news on Granit Xhaka, and it's good news, or well, it's certainly good news for Granit Xhaka fans. Maybe for a lot of you who don't like Granit Xhaka, and there's plenty of them in the Arsenal fan base, it's not so good news. But personally, I think it's good news because I still think Xhaka, for all his faults, and he has many. He's still an important part of the team, important part of the squad, important voice. He's very popular as well, and I think Arsenal, the changing room and the squad is stronger when he's around. And Mikel was asked about him, and he said hopefully he will be back a little sooner than expected. He is training and pushing himself, and all the staff so hard like he always does. He's in a good place, he is evolving well, and hopefully we can have him back a little bit earlier. It's still a bit early to decide. We'll see what happens. Now, Arsenal have always said all their team news updates that they put out that Xhaka is aiming to return to full training at the start of 2022, so in January. But what Mikel said there seems to suggest that they might have him back, and it doesn't surprise me. I think I said it in yesterday's video that I wouldn't be surprised if he's back at some point in December, because it's just the kind of character Xhaka is, and he'll always work hard to try and be back as soon as he possibly can. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see him back in a couple of weeks or so. The fact that he's training at the moment, I've not seen him doing any contact stuff with the rest of the squad yet, but the fact he's training and he's working with the ball, just feels like, January feels like a long time away from that. So I kind of suspect maybe 2 weeks' time we might see him back training with the team, and then could well be involved for the festive period. And then Mikel, again, he was sort of pushed a little bit further on it. He said, will we see him back before the end of the year? And he said, I hope so. Yes, so good news on Granit Xhaka, and good news on the rest of the Arsenal team news, unless Mikel is lying, which he tends to. He can do when it comes to team news. They like to cover things up a little bit, but he was asked if there's any other issues, and he says no news. Everyone is fine so far. Obviously, we know Sead Kolasinac isn't available with that ankle injury that he sustained while on international duty, but everyone else appears to be fine. I said it in yesterday's video in terms of what team I'm expecting. And certainly a couple of the changes that Arsenal might make. They're in a strong position squad-wise. Barring Xhaka and Kolasinac, Mikel's got everyone to choose from. I do feel like we'll see a couple of changes for the Newcastle game. Certainly Kieran Tierney coming in. And so Arsenal in a good position going into that Newcastle game. And that's exactly what you want to see, because it's a big one. Interesting stuff on Arsene Wenger from Mikel Arteta. Now, I did a video after I'd gone to the premiere of Wenger's new film, which you haven't seen yet. You should, because it's very, very good. And I spoke to Mikel at the premiere there, and I asked him about that big giant picture that he's installed and the entrance to the training centre at London Colney. So the players, when they walk through the door, open the door, the first thing they see is this big picture of Arsene Wenger. He's got his hand up like this, and there's a quote from him underneath it, and the players apparently high-five him as they walk through. It's become a bit of a thing that they all do. And I spoke to Mikel about that and why he'd done that, and he told me why exactly, and why he feels it's really important to have Wenger's presence around. And obviously that's just a picture, but he has revealed in today's press conference that he is now in talks with Wenger, trying to get him to come back to the club in some capacity, and he wants him around. This is what he had to say. He said, I saw him and I talked to him when we went to see the film, and it was incredibly pleasant to chat to him, and hopefully we can bring him close. I think he would have a great time just seeing the environment he can create around him when he is around this place, because of the respect, admiration and the love that everybody at the club has for him and for what he has done, as well as what he represents as a person for this club. So that's what he had to say. And then he was asked a little bit about, what role do you see Arsene Wenger having if he does come back, if you do bring him back to be a bit more of a presence around the club? So what sort of role? Is an ambassador one? And this is what he had to say. He said, I cannot tell you now, but what I can say is I would like him to be much closer to me personally, because I think it'd be a great help. I think it'd be a great help for the club. Things take time, and I think he has to dictate those timings. What I can say from my side, and I think on behalf of everybody, is we would be delighted to have him much closer. Now, I said what I had to say really about Wenger after that Wenger film, and why I think he needs to be involved a little bit more around the club. And I'm not saying put him on the board. I'm not saying let him be chairman, anything like that. He wouldn't want to do that, I don't think, anyway, right now. I still think the scars are pretty obvious, are there from the way he left, and the last couple of years of his time. That, he said in the film, he ends the film, one of the last lines is how he doesn't feel like there's any special reason for him to go back, which I said again, it just made me feel really sad hearing that. But I think having if he does, if Arteta can convince him to come back, then I just don't see any real negatives in it. I've got to say, if he's just going to be around the club, if he's not going to be taking decisions on transfers, on any, how the football operations work, he's just more of a presence around there to inspire the players, to give Arteta his knowledge. I mean, you've got one of the greatest football minds of our generation, of any generation there, and he's a full-on Arsenal man. So why not have him involved? And if the manager wants it, and I imagine Edu would certainly not have any issues with it, given Edu's relationship with Arsene Wenger, I don't see why there's an issue here. Obviously, like I said, I wouldn't want him really getting involved in the running of the club, transfers, that sort of thing, because he's moved on from that. He's got his other role in FIFA. But just to have him as an ambassador, an inspirational figure around the place, who the players can get experience from, who Arteta, the coaching staff, can get experience from, there's no issue. I just don't see the issue in it. So, for me personally, my thoughts on it are hopefully that if talks can continue between the pair, and that Edu gives it the green light, and the Cronkies, I suppose, will have to give it the green light, then you get him back in as much as you can, get him around London, Colney. I just don't see the issue in it at all. Okay, finally, some interesting stuff from Arteta on Lacazette and his contract and his future. Interest in this, I'm not sure. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of Alexandre Lacazette's contract. We know he's out of contract at the end of the season, so in January he can go and sign a pre-contract agreement with a foreign club. He's free to talk to who he wants overseas when it comes to January. And I don't know what's in the contract that he signed when he first arrived at Arsenal. He's never extended it. Obviously, it was a 5-year contract. This is the 5th year. But this is what Mikel Arteta had to say. He was asked about about the future of Lacazette and his contract, and he said, "That's a position and a situation that is happening more and more in football. He is not the only one. We have a few, and that's something that we have to be dealing with. Contracts that are coming from a few years ago with certain particularities. We knew that was the case. I already spoke with him individually about how we have to handle these situations the best possible way, and that's it." I thought it was really interesting when he said contracts that are coming up from a few years ago with certain particularities. I just don't know. I don't know what he's getting at there, what he means. And like I said, I don't know the ins and outs of Lacazette's contract, but it's almost makes me feel like there's, loyalty bonuses or something if players see out their contracts, that these ones that were signed from a few years ago that the club handed out. Are there players who see out all their contract and don't go before then, are they due a loyalty bonus and things like that? I don't know, and I don't know, that's me speculating. So but I just thought it was really interesting. And he was asked, are you concerned that he can sign a pre-contract agreement with another club in January, and what impact could that have in his performances almost? He said, "It is a situation we have, whether you're concerned or not. Things have happened in the last few seasons for different players with the possibilities that are there. Sometimes the club has more control and sometimes the player has more control, but the important thing is that the communication is clear and the intention of both parties while they're together are very clear." And he went on to add that those intentions are just the fact that while you're here, while you're contracted, you need to be as committed as possible, even if you've got 6 years left or if you've got 6 months left. And to be fair, I think we've seen nothing from Lacazette to suggest that he won't be committed to the club between now and the end of the season, even if nothing is signed, which, to be honest, I'm not expecting it to be signed. And I think he's been performing well, Lacazette. He's been working hard. That's been very obvious. So I don't really see it too much of an issue in terms of him down in tools or anything like that. I just can't see it happening, even if he does go and agree a deal in January to move abroad at the end of the season. All right, everyone, thank you very much for watching. Appreciate your time. As always, I'll pop back tomorrow, do a video looking firmly ahead to that game against Newcastle, do my predicted 11, that sort of thing. So keep an eye out for that one. Until then, enjoy Thursday. The sun's shining. It may be cold, but get out there, enjoy yourselves. And yeah, have a great day. I'll speak to you soon.